Very much.
Right. Now, first of all, our condolence to you and the people that work here and the people of South Africa as a whole. I receive our condolence from Joy News team. Now, first of all, can you tell us a bit, what is your fondest memory of the late former president?
Well, thank you, and good morning to you and your listeners. I think the fondest memory is that this man who seemed to be so flawless, brought us freedom to our country. This man spent 27 years in prison so that we as South Africans, black and white together, can enjoy the freedom that we do today. I also remember the fierce fight. He was a man of peace, but he put up a fierce fight against poverty. He put up a fierce fight against HIV and AIDS. He fought for the restoration of the dignity of black people. So for us, we have very fond memories of him. He put South Africa on the global stage, and Africans benefited collectively because he reclaimed the dignity of black people everywhere. And as we mourn his loss, we also need to celebrate his life, because we as Africans can look up to Mandela and say, Mandela, thank you, Ayiko, because of the work that he did for us.
Now, firstly, how did you receive the news of his demise?
Well, we got calls, SMSs, from all over South Africa. South Africans are currently in deep mourning. They are mourning the loss of the greatest son that we have ever had, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, a man who said, if need be, he is willing to die for the cause of the African people. And so we see him coming out of prison and going across the continent and making sure that we as Africans work together to reclaim the dignity of our continent. He was tireless in his efforts to make sure that the voices of African people, who for the most part were marginalized on the global stage, Mandela came in and occupied that space on behalf of the peoples of Africa. And today we are respected everywhere. The whole world today is mourning the loss of Nelson Mandela, but also celebrating the rich legacy that he has left for us.
Right. Now, when we got in earlier on, I saw the emotions on your face and all that. Yesterday night, when you received the news of his demise, what went on in your heart and in your head?
I just went, this is an end of an era, the Madiba era, because even though he had been sick for a while, you could see from all of us South Africans that we were hoping that he will be with us for much longer. We knew that he couldn't operate the way he used to operate, but just having him on this planet with us, he will continue to inspire many people. The other day I was in Kumasi, and a young lady came to me and said, "Oh, ma'am, are you from South Africa?" I said, "Yes, how did you know?" She said, "I'm praying for Madiba." This is a young girl who probably was not born when Madiba started his fight for freedom. So that's the kind of emotion that you get when you talk about Madiba. Yes, he was sick, but of course we wanted him with us much longer, even if it's just to inspire us to continue to implement his ideals. But now he is gone, and we can only say, rest in peace, that you did your part, you fought a good fight. This is the time for you now to rest.
Well, now let's talk about his legacy that he left globally, and especially for the people of South Africa. Madiba had been recognized worldwide as the greatest of men, especially, and Africans are very proud of him when his name is mentioned. All other people are always giving him the respect. he left so many legacies. What can you say about the legacy he has left for the people of South Africa before we even come to what he's left for the world?
I think the protection of human rights of all. Remember, black people had no rights in South Africa. He fought for the rights of African people. And he himself said in jail when he was sentenced that I fought against white domination, I am also going to fight against black domination. And he said, these are the ideals that I am willing to fight for, but if need be, these are the ideals that I'm willing to die for. So you see him being embraced by black, white, Asians, everybody recognizes that Madiba played a pivotal role, not only for South Africans, but indeed the world. Look at him the minute he realized that his son had HIV and AIDS. He just got up and told the world that this is a disease like any other disease. So we need to work together to defeat this new enemy. So for me, the legacy is the respect for the rights of all. He was talking about economic, social, and cultural rights for all, as well as civil and political rights for all. So it was rights in its totality. He was a man who loved humanity, but what he hated most was to see human suffering. So he dedicated his life to that, and as he departs from this planet, I think he has left that legacy for all of us to pick up the spear and make sure that we live by the ideals for which he died and went to prison.
Right, now, let's talk about some of the challenges Madiba has faced when he was the president of the South African people. We all know the struggle he went through before becoming a reigning president with F.W. de Klerk, and then subsequently became the first black president of the South African people. What are some of the challenges that South Africans are facing as a result of him retiring as the president of this particular big nation of Africa?
I think after 300 years of colonial rule in South Africa, the challenges were enormous. The system of apartheid was so entrenched that you found that you had what we call an island of prosperity within South Africa, surrounded by massive, massive sea of poverty. So his immediate challenge was to make sure that there's benefits to liberation. He made sure that there's water, clean water and sanitation in the black areas. He made sure that education, he tackles the problems of education, inferior Bantu education, scrapping all the previous departments that were established by apartheid government to establish new departments that embrace the totality of the South African people. And I think we can say to him that thank you, because we are now on a onward movement to a better society. I think the vision that he had for South Africa is not all completely realized. But I must say we are proud that he has been able to lay a very firm foundation for the kind of South Africa that this government is still hoping for. We have gotten our political freedom. The challenges of economic freedom are enormous. That is what Madiba wanted us to tackle and work for. That's why even when we thought he's retired, Madiba continued to work in the field of education, in the field of health, in the field of peace and security globally, and encouraged African leaders to restore the dignity of their peoples by ensuring that we finally defeat poverty. Colonialism, for the most part, on the African continent has been defeated. What current leadership of Africa needs to make sure that they do is to fight the dehumanizing poverty that we find in many of our communities. I think that is the legacy that Madiba is leaving for us.
Now you're still on Joy News. We are talking about Nelson Madiba, the first black South African president. He reigned from May 10, 1994 to 1999. That was the period of his presidency. And then he retired voluntarily by giving up his position or his post as the president of the ANC, and then subsequently refused to contest the following election of the presidency. You are still at the residence of the South African High Commissioner. Ma'am, now, Madiba is also known to be a father to everyone across Africa and some parts of this world, if not all of the world. What are the people of Africa, especially South Africa, what are they going to do to ensure that the legacy he has left for these people and the young ones is being able to, they are able to take them through or to link them through so that they will be able to sustain the legacy he has left for the people, and that it will be imbibed into the children of Africa and South Africa especially?
I believe that just like Kwame Nkrumah, for me, I'm not Ghanaian, but I was inspired by Kwame Nkrumah. I was inspired by the ideals that he talked about when he said, the independence of Ghana is meaningless without the total liberation of the African continent. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but I think we can say the same about Madiba, that he has written, he has spoken, let's learn from our leadership, African leadership, because you can't look outside the continent to find inspiration more than some of the leaders who have led this continent. Kwame Nkrumah worked with men like Julius Nyerere, men like President Kaunda of Zambia. We have great leaders, but we always talk down our leaders. Those leaders have written, they have left legacies for us, and it is upon us, it's incumbent upon us to pick up the spear and move forward so that the Africa that they had envisaged is realized. Currently, we are still getting there, but I'm encouraged by the fact that the current breed of African leaders are working tirelessly, whether it's through infrastructure development or through the fight against HIV and AIDS. In Addis Ababa right now, the decisions that are taken there are meaningful because we see that the current leadership we have at the AU level is a serious leadership that wants a better continent. But I also want to say Madiba started as a young man volunteering within the African National Congress youth section. And he wasn't looking for money. He was looking towards contributing for a better society. Today, what we are seeing is young people who care more about money, who don't care about the values that we should all be embracing, the values of Ubuntu. I think we need to revisit the way we look at the world and stop apportioning blame to leaders. I think if we do what we can within our small sphere of influence, in the journalism arena, make sure that whatever you do it to the best of your ability. That's what Nelson Mandela was. And if you look at the history of the ANC, where he came from, that organization was led by men of God, but they were also men who were educated. Our young people need to understand that to get to the top, they need to equip themselves with the requisite skills to be able to be effective leaders. And so that is what Mandela was about. He was a lawyer, qualified. He could have sat back and said, oh, well, I'm educated, I can get a good job. No. He got his education, but then he said, I need to go out there and mobilize the youth of South Africa to fight against the policies of apartheid. today we are enjoying South Africa's democracy
Right.
thanks to his sacrifices.
Right. Now let's come back to education. Like you were saying, even though he was in prison, he was still schooling. He went through his bachelorship whilst in prison. I mean, what does this say about education? What would you say the legacy of Mandela on education is?
I tell you, when I went with the mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Villaraigosa at that time, and we're sitting with Madiba, he was already very frail. When I took that picture behind me with him, he was already very weak. And the mayor of Los Angeles asked him, Mr. President, what would you want me to tell the youth of Los Angeles? And Madiba said, education, education, education. Education is a great equalizer. So we see him, even the people who were with him in prison, when they came back more educated than when they were outside prison walls. So it is a lesson to our young people that they need to equip themselves and use this great equalizer that Madiba called education to improve their lot, to improve their communities, to improve their country, and indeed to improve the whole continent of Africa.
Right. Now, let's move away a bit about the legacy of Mandela. What do you think is going on right now in South Africa? What picture can you paint to us as to when the news was broken, what has transpired so far, and what the plans will be like?
I think right now there's a serious sense of loss and mourning, but I think also at the same time there's a great sense of jubilation that this man who has brought us to this promised land, even though he's no longer with us, let's thank him. The people of South Africa are deeply grateful to Madiba for what he has done for our country. From a pariah state where other nations didn't want to have any dealings with apartheid South Africa, to being a respected member of the international community. People come from all over the world to South Africa thanks to the work that Nelson Mandela did together with his friend Oliver Tambo. You know, when you get to South Africa, you arrive at Oliver Tambo International Airport. The two leaders were selfless in their commitment to a prosperous South Africa. So South Africans are grateful of all colors. There's fewer individuals in every society, but for the most part, our people are celebrating the life of Madiba, while at the same time mourning that he's no longer with us. I can see people going with candles to his house, going with cards, saying bye-bye, Tata Madiba, and just that celebratory mood, while at the same time we are mourning.
Right. Now, we know Africa here, most of Africans are not the flower type. Is there any sort of thing that South Africans also use flowers in telling or in saying, sending their condolences or their happiness or whatever to a particular house when something of a sort happens?
Oh, because of the cultural diversity that we have in South Africa, our motto says, united in diversity. So you have those that will bring flowers because their culture says they should bring flowers. There are those who will bring ukamba. Ukamba is like your calabash. They will bring that. Some will bring reeds, like this reed that you see in front of us. The life of Madiba is going to be celebrated and mourned in the totality of the cultural elements that South Africa has. But I must say one thing that we are sure of as South Africans is that wherever we are, there will be church services in honor of Madiba to pray for his soul and his family and for the country. There will be young people composing poems. There will be all kinds of activities. I'm hoping that here in Accra also, I know for sure that there will be church services praying for his soul, and also just expressing their gratitude for the exemplary manner in which Madiba lived his life.
Now, let's go more into the tradition of the South African people. Now that he's dead, in Ghana here, in some sections of clans and tribes, the first week is used to celebrate the first week of the death of that particular person. We have other things that we do when a person dies. In South Africa, can you take us through what goes on when a person like Madiba and from his tribe, what happens from the time he's reported dead to the time he's buried? Can you take us through that?
Oh, in South Africa, it depends where you are, because then there's urban areas and then you have the rural areas. In the urban centers, for the most part, when somebody passes, it becomes a period for mourning. You start the mourning period immediately, and then you cover your mirrors. You're not supposed to show mirrors. Anything that shows celebration is put away. Pictures are put away and so forth. And then people will be coming to the house. Even the beds are removed. You only sit on the floor, on the mattresses or on the floor. And you have a stream of people coming in to come and express their condolences. And family members will come and tell the story of what happened and reminisce over the good life of this person. And, you know, you cry, but at the same time you also laugh about what your experiences are with this person. And then you know, usually we bury on weekends. Saturday, Friday, if it's going to be buried on Saturday, Friday evening, you have a wake, and the body comes in the afternoon, and you have church services. In the house, the preachers come and preach and pray for the family and pray for the deceased. And then Saturday morning, you go to the graveyard, and that's where the mortal remains are buried. We have those graveyards which are huge all over South Africa, and that's the last thing you do. But I must say, compared to the way you do things when it comes to burials here in Ghana, I think you are more elaborate. Well, before I came here, I used to think that some of our people spent too much money on funerals, but I think you do more. But I think with this one, it's going to be different. I think already heads of states have expressed their wishes to be at Madiba's funeral. And it's going to be a funeral and a celebration of Madiba's life.
Okay. Now, we are still live on Joy News in our coverage of the death of the late former president of the South African Republic, Nelson Madiba Mandela. We are still here with the High Commissioner to Ghana. Ma'am, let's get back to Mandela's legacy once again. What exactly would you point out to people about what you think is the highest point of Mandela's life that you want other people to emulate in your own point of view?
Oh, I think just being a caring society. Look at Madiba building the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital in South Africa and making sure that those children from other parts of Africa where they can't have medical care or life-saving machines and equipment, those children were invited and were totally taken care of by Nelson Mandela. So for me, the caring that he showed towards fellow human beings, he just did not build that hospital only for South African children throughout the continent. And I think Madiba earned his respect. It wasn't given to him on a silver platter. If you follow his history, there were times that he didn't have to sleep at home because the apartheid police were after him. But that never deterred him from doing what he wanted to do, which is to be fully engaged in the liberation struggle. To him, I think that is the rights that I was talking about earlier, that the rights, economic and social rights, he preached and worked towards. So honestly, for me, I think the issue of human rights is what Madiba lived for, and that is what he died.
Right. Now, did you know him? Did you know him personally? Did you have any personal interaction with him? And what do you make of him?
Oh, he was my leader in the African National Congress. When I went into exile, he was in prison. But when I came back from exile, I got to meet him on a few occasions. But I think the most memorable time I had with him was when we went with the mayor of Los Angeles. That was about 3-4 years ago. Yeah. He was already frail, but he was still working. Like I said, when the mayor of Los Angeles asked him, what should I tell the children of Los Angeles when I get back there? And he said, education is a great equalizer. And so look at this man who was so educated himself, and he valued education so much, but he was willing to put that aside and fight for the rights of all in South Africa. And now, even after he finished his term in office, he continued to fight for the economic rights of people all over the African continent. So for me, the day when I sat in his office, looking at him in the face, was one of the most memorable days of my life. That's why this picture with him there, it's very special to me. It took them time to send it to me, but I just knew that I wanted him in my house. When I come in and when I go out of my house, I see this face of Madiba so that I can continue to remember that I'm on this planet, not to serve myself, but to serve those who are less fortunate than myself. Yes. So that was very inspirational for me.
Right. Now, where were you the day he was released from prison, and how old were you? I mean, around that time, what was the feeling like when he was released from prison?
Well, when I won't tell you my age, of course, but when Madiba walked out of the prison walls, I who had been sent to the United States to campaign for the isolation of apartheid. We were responsible for mobilizing the anti-apartheid movement in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, because this fight was not easily fought. And so we were told that he was going to come out of prison. And we are all congregating where we used to hold. There's a corner that is called Winnie and Nelson Mandela Corner in New York. That's where the Apartheid High Commission was, or their office to the United Nations. So to irritate the apartheid government, we asked the mayor of New York to change the name to Nelson and Winnie Mandela Corner. So we're there on 42nd Street and 2nd Avenue. And we were celebrating with freedom-loving people from all over the U.S. Some of them were in town as tourists, but when they saw us standing there and the world celebrated with us. The world celebrated with the continent, because this struggle for liberation that Nelson Mandela symbolized was a struggle that started with Nkrumah saying the liberation of Ghana is meaningless without the total liberation of the African continent. So even though Africa was very poor continent, but Africans did their part to contribute to the Liberation Committee Fund of the OAU, which finally led to our own freedom.
Now, let me come back to what you intend planning here in Ghana. I know when something like this happens, you expect a lot of visitors around here and all that. And then your fellow or your neighbors in South Africa, like Zimbabwe and the rest that have their consulate here, what plans do you have in respect of the death and the preparations you are making towards the final resting place of the late president?
You know, look at our staff members here today wearing the Nelson Mandela T-shirts. Today is supposed to be their holiday. But because they are South Africans, they love their president, they love what Madiba stood for. They are here with me, wearing their Nelson Mandela T-shirts to come and receive those who will want to come and express their condolences. We know that there's lots of people who are going to come through those doors. And so we'll be here to receive them and to help them as they sign the book of condolence. But also we will be working with the churches to celebrate the life of Madiba. I'm sure there will be prayer services around the country. We will announce that as soon as the plans are put in place. We are expecting high-level visitors from the president to the ministers to business leaders and so forth to come through here. But I think as soon as those plans are put in place, and a church this morning had already approached me to say that they want to have a memorial service in honor of Madiba. And we would hope that other churches can come forward so that we have a collective church community working together to celebrate the life of Madiba and saying goodbye to him.
Yeah. Do you have any plans of probably working with the government of this particular country in holding probably a higher memorial service on the Kwame Nkrumah Muslim, wherever, or probably at the State House or the stadium or the National Independence Square? Do you have any plans of collaborating with the government to make sure these things happen? Because Mandela is not a small person, he is big, and definitely memorial service in his honor is certainly going to attract a lot of people. So have you made arrangements for the numbers that are going to come?
Well, I have no doubt that there will be a huge memorial service here in Ghana. Whether Accra or Kumasi or whatever. I have no doubt that there will be such an event, but I think right now it's premature to say exactly what is going to be organized. But I am calling upon the church leaders of this country to also do their part in ensuring that they mobilize their membership to pray for Madiba, to pray for his soul, because you see, when things get tough, we always look up to the church. So I know for sure that the churches also will do their part, as well as, of course, government will, I'm sure, do something to remember Madiba, especially because many of the leadership of this government have been inspired by people like Nelson Mandela. So I am just hoping and praying that as the plans unfold, we will let you know, so that a massive number of Ghanaians come out to celebrate the life of Madiba.
Now, let's limit ourselves to the first week of his death. What arrangements will be there from tomorrow? I know from today people will be coming. When we were coming in, there were some people standing outside there. Probably they are planning themselves to gathering themselves to come in here. What are the plans from now to probably next week, Friday?
Oh gosh, I'm sure people will be coming through to express their condolences and sign the condolence book. But in terms of concrete plans, this happened last night. We also then expect guidance from our leadership in Pretoria. So as soon as anything is concretized, we'll let the media know. But right now, what we are doing is just to open the book of condolence and ask for prayers, that the Ghanaians should pray for his soul to rest in peace.
Right. Now, you've already talked about Mandela's role in solving the challenges faced by South Africa. Will his death end this fight? Because we know the challenges keep compounding, they keep coming up. But with him being around, it was always motivational for people to look up to him, to go and ask for advice and all that, to make sure these challenges are tackled one after the other. With his passing, will that commitment still be there?
I frankly believe that Madiba was in the line of leadership among many other leaders of the African National Congress. Whether you're talking about John Dube, the first president of the ANC, to Chief Albert Luthuli, who was one of the presidents of the ANC to receive a Nobel Peace Prize, and all the other leaders of the ANC, they have actually not departed from this one focus, which is sustainable development. So I think with the passing of Madiba, we will continue to have presidents who push the agenda of the African National Congress. And every one of them will play their rightful role. But it's not only Madiba, much as we revere him and we love him. He always said that he takes instructions from the leadership of the African National Congress. So this leadership is a collective leadership. He has moved on, but there's others who have to pick up the baton and move forward, so that the South Africa that we established in Bloemfontein on January 10th, on January 8th, 1912. That is when the ANC was born. And each and every leaders of that organization has always listened to what the organization stands for. It's just that Madiba was extraordinary because he was so gifted and so talented. He was a boxer. He could relate to the intellectuals. He could relate to ordinary people. He was just an extraordinary man. But we have had very good leadership within the African National Congress. Last year we celebrated the 100 years, the centenary of the African National Congress. So I don't think that there will be a departure from what Madiba stood for. I think he's, like I said earlier, he laid a solid foundation for a democratic South Africa. So all the other leaders will be following in the footsteps.
Now, before we hand over to the studio, your final words to Ghanaians and the nation as a whole, and then the people of South Africa.
Oh, the final word is that we thank you. We thank you, people of Ghana. We thank you to the church community, to the government, to the youth, to the women and children. We thank you for having been with us during this very difficult period when Madiba was in hospital and was not well. We know you stood by us and you prayed for him. I heard you over the radio and on television and other media that you were always praying for Madiba's well-being. But now the Creator has spoken. It is time now for us to once more pray and say, Lala kahle, Datu Madiba, rest in peace, and may your journey be a bright one.
All right, thank you very much for handling our invitation, Joy News. You're still live on Joy News TV. We'll still be continuing with the live coverage of the reportage of the late president of the South African people, Nelson Madiba Mandela. We'll hand over back to you in the studio to continue with the discussion.